Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you enjoyed your day off. We're going to get into some stuff here on the channel that most people are probably not aware of in terms of Elvis. And these things that we're going to cover today, some of it has probably been covered by other channels. One channel in particular, Jrassic Liars, as well as June Knight, may have covered some of this stuff. I don't watch other people's channels for content, but apparently some of this stuff, especially this film that we're going to cover today, was already decoded years ago and was taken down for copyright reasons on Jurassic Liars channel. So if there is any overlap in the information, was not intentional. So we're going to give it the Enter the Stars treatment today. And our rabbit hole journey begins with a question. And that is, how did Elvis get the American people to accept the polio vaccine? Now, the rabbit hole journey begins at the World's Fair. And it would be accurate to say, almost accurate, that that's when it began. But it actually began in 1956, before the 1963 World's Fair, 7 years before, when Elvis was vaccinated on live TV for polio. Now, to go back in time and look at this moment in time and what all this meant and how it happened, you have to remember that historically there were a lot of people that did not want the vaccine, even despite the fact that there were all these side effects that people were seeing starting to come out, or what they thought were side effects that were coming out. It's very difficult to determine which came first, the chicken or the egg, in terms of these deformations and things that happened during the polio era. A lot of people believed that a lot of this happened after the jab. But here are some of the pictures from the Ed Sullivan Show, 1956, which predated the film that we're going to decode today, called It Happened in Seattle, or at the World's Fair, sorry. So this is Elvis on live TV, and this article goes on to explain that there was vaccine hesitancy going on during this era. And then Elvis made the decision to go on TV and do this live, and many people followed suit. Many people followed his example and got the Apollyon vaccine. Let's read a little bit of this so we can get caught up on some of the history before we get into this film decode, how Elvis got Americans to accept the polio vaccine. Now let me go in here into the chat, make sure you guys are with me, make sure we're connected. Very good. All right. Sound looks like it's okay. So let's read this article very quickly and then get into this. In the late 1956, Presley was on the precipice of global stardom. Heartbreak Hotel had reached #1 on the charts earlier that year, and Love Me Tender, his debut film, would be released in November. In the midst of this trajectory, he was booked as a guest on the most popular TV show at the time, Ed Sullivan Show. But he wasn't only there to perform his hits. Before the show started, in front of the press and Ed Sullivan himself, Presley flashed his swoon-worthy smile, rolled up his sleeves, and let a New York state official stick a needle loaded up with polio vaccine into his arm. At that point, the polio virus had been ravaging the American landscape for years, and approximately 60,000 children were infected annually. By 1955, hope famously arrived in the form of Jonas Salk vaccine. But despite the literally crippling effects of the virus and the promising results of the vaccination, many Americans simply weren't getting vaccinated. In fact, when Presley appeared on Sullivan Show, immunization levels among American teens were at an abysmal 0.6%. You might think that threats to children's life and health and life expectancy would be enough to motivate people to get vaccinated. Yet, convincing people to get a vaccine is a challenging endeavor. So even back then, there was a lot of vaccine hesitancy. Well, 7 years later, Elvis starred in a film that seems like a vaccine mockery ritual. The film was called It Happened at the World's Fair. And as you will see very soon, some of what we were talking about in terms of needles and all these things are happening as we move through these scenes here. Now, the film was set at the Space Needle in Seattle, which we know now is a hypodermic needle. The Space Needle opened a year prior to this film releasing and was the site of the 1962 World's Fair. Now, something that we have not dug into yet, which the other channels have, is Jrassic Liars, and as well as June Knight, apparently from the comments that I've read about what you guys have talked about, is this whole Elvis clone thing. Elvis being a clone of Trump, or a twin. So this is our first analysis of that theory, and you're going to see all of that come out in this film here. Now, as I said at the beginning of this show today, I do not watch other people's channels to do my research. So if any of this information crosses over with the other channels, it's unintentional. So if you hear something you already heard on another channel, please shout out that particular piece of information in the comments or the chat so that channel gets their credit. Now, early on when we started this channel, it almost felt like a lot of channels were copying our channel because we've been around since 2012, and I used to get upset about it. And now I've realized that sometimes when other people discover things, they're discovering that on their own, and this is good because it reinforces and validates their original discovery. So I did hear somebody mention June Knight from WATB Ministries and Jrassic Liars as channels that were looking at this twin Elvis connection. So I do want to give props to those channels for talking about this stuff and discovering this and focusing on it as far back as I think people said a couple years ago. So shout out to them. Now, here's our playlist called A Needle in the Haystack. And back in I guess it says 6 years ago here. This was before the vaccine, this was right about the time, right after Trump took office, before the pandemic, of course. We called out Trump as the eye of the needle. Now I'm going to play this video. And then 2 years ago, we talked about Trump being the needle, the tip of the spear, the point, as you can see here in this playlist. And I'll put a link to this playlist here so you guys can see this. But I want to play this original video here because this really says it all. And I got chills when I rewatched this video from 6 years ago of us talking about Trump being associated with a needle. This was pretty much the first time anyone had really talked about this. Let's play this video here, and then we'll get into the decode of It Happened at the World's Fair. Now I'm going to mute the sound here because it's just a soundtrack playing in the background. This is the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge, and it actually was not constructed, but the architect was Calatrava. This is the same guy that built some of the stuff at Ground Zero. And Hunt Hill is 88, and this particular bridge in Dallas, Texas, opened on my birthday, the 88th day of the year. Now, what makes this interesting, I was living in Dallas at the time. This was a long time ago. Many of you will remember this. And none of us really knew what all this was going to mean. But as you're going to see here, I link this to Trump talking about the eye of the needle. Here's the scripture from the Bible. It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. This is live footage that I took with my GoPro driving across the bridge. You look over to the right and you see what appears to be a DNA strand building on the side of a building. This is in downtown Dallas. So many of your memories are coming back to you now at this point. You're starting to remember this video. But let's keep watching here because there's more connections to Trump and needles. The IXXI building of Dallas. Of course, IXXI is 9/11. This is Margaret Hill Hunt. And this is the Kissing Camels Club, which was what I guess she was let's just read this. Together with her husband, she built 2 luxury resorts in Colorado Springs, Colorado, the Garden of the Gods Club and the Kissing Camels Club. Let's keep watching here. Kissing camel. Camel would be the camel going through the eye of a needle, right? And she died on Trump's birthday at 91 years old. He was 61 years old when she died. 61, 91. Now, what is the connection here? Well, again, he had just become president. Rich man passing through the eye of the needle, the camel passing through the eye of a needle. And this is when the building or the bridge opened on March 29th. And the significance of that is the 88th day of the year. It's the number 88. The Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge, her name HH as well, which is another 88, and that's why it opened on the 88th day. So it's very quickly becoming apparent that this particular bridge is some kind of portal, right? Now let's keep watching here because there's more. So this becomes the eye of a needle, doesn't it? And it looks like the eye of a needle. Little would we know later that he would be the needle itself, piercing everybody as the father of the vaccine. Here you see the moon phases going through, or very near through, the eye of the needle. There's the sun. And remember, the sun and the moon form the analemma, which is the figure 8 in the sky. Throughout the year, they actually literally make a figure 8 in the sky. And this is where the number 88 comes from. It's the sun path and the moon path. Time and space. Let's keep watching this video. Now, when I rewatched this, because I had to look back, I was like, who was talking about Trump and needles? I was like, I'm sure we had dug into that early on. But here's the bridge here. Let's take a look at this from Google Earth. And as you can see, it's very close to the Kennedy assassination. And this will fit into our show today because 1963 was the year that Kennedy was assassinated. And that is the year that the film that we're going to cover today that came out. It happened in Seattle. It came out in 1963. Let's keep watching here. Here's the Kennedy assassination over here to the right, just to the right of the bridge. I guess you could say that these support systems look like threads almost. Threads going through the eye of the needle. Here's an article dated October 26th. Donald Trump has a very sad, depressing, difficult life. Well, that was Hillary Clinton's birthday. That was 2015, the year prior to his presidency. And in this particular article, Trump says in his own words, "It's been so difficult for me because there's that Bible verse. I think it's Noah 3:14 about how it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. It makes me so sad because, as you know, I'm very rich. I'm breeding a line of these are Trump's words. I'm breeding a line of microscopic camels, and I'm sparing no expense. It may cost me $500 million, but it's important, classy, scientific work." What was he breeding back in 2015 on Hillary Clinton's birthday? Was this a clue about the coming vaccine. Wow. This is a video we did from 2016, you guys. Let's keep watching here. I think that's the end of this video here. Now, the playlist goes on, and you'll see the other references we made to the needle. We never connected Trump to the Space Needle in Seattle. That was what Jrassic Liars and June Knight did. Now, let me check in with you guys, because I'm even blown away by this information all the way back then. A clue. Microscopic camels. What does that mean? He spent $500 million. Now, again, all of that was before the pandemic ever happened, before there was a coronavirus or anything. Before he would ever wield the needle as the father of the vaccine. And all of that came from a revelation as I was crossing over a bridge in Dallas, Texas. Now, as I said, you're going to see that needle and eye symbolism repeat in today's Elvis decode. There's literally a scene where there's an eye and a needle. And it happened at the World's Fair. So, there you go. There's the information. Now, let's keep going here, because apparently Jrassic Liars already decoded this film we're going to look at next and got it taken down for copyright reasons. So I'm anxious to present this to you, to see what we find on our end, and we're going to try to be careful. We're going to use fair use. We're doing commentary and critique. And there's a case precedent for this to protect us from this video getting taken down. The case precedent is Hosseinzadeh versus Klein. And in that court decision, they decided that commentary and critique is fair use as long as the intent was not to produce a market reproduction copy, which we are not doing here. We're giving our commentary and critique. And I'll reference this timestamp if this gets a copyright violation. But just so you know, if we get a warning on this, any kind of warning on this, I'm going to have to take it down and upload it to ODYSEE just to protect the channel. So let's jump right into this. Trump is the self-declared father of the COVID vaccine, is he not? And the Trump name was a prominent fixture in both coronavirus park world's fairs. Why do I call them coronavirus parks? Because they both took place in Corona Park, Flushing Meadows. 1939 and 1964, those World's Fairs took place. But there were many, many more connections. What you're going to see next is really, really spooky. The film opens with Elvis singing about the rainbow portal and beyond the bend. Listen.
That rainbow beyond the bend.
He then crop dusts a field of potatoes, which he and his co-pilot later compare to people. Then he talks about razor sharp turns and silver cops at the end of the run. Copper cops. Essentially what you're looking at here is a foreshadowing of the world of chemtrails before there were chemtrails. Watch and listen carefully to this ritual spell.
Trying to save a little gas.
Oh my God, we're supposed to dust those potatoes, not peel them.
We're supposed to dust those potatoes, not peel them.
Do you like them mashed?
He said, or you like them mashed. Listen to what he says next.
nice scenery around here.
If you've seen one potato, you've seen them all.
If you've seen one potato, you've seen them all.
I think I just spotted a couple of sweet potatoes.
Spotted a couple sweet potatoes, so they're obviously crop dusting people. That's what they're doing here.
You're a little confused, leader. Those down there are russets.
You just don't know a sweet potato when you see one.
Those down there are russets. You don't know a sweet potato when you see one. It's a little hard to hear, so I'm translating this for you guys.
No, but I know a telephone pole when I see one. Pull her out. Come on, girls.
So, distracted, as you just saw, they almost crash into the telephone lines. And there's your copper telephone lines, your 5G copper matrix angle before there was 5G. So, already we have the trails, we have the frequencies, we have the pokers, and him getting vaccinated 7 years earlier, all tying in together to control the hive. Now let's keep watching here, because now they're going to introduce the illness or disease theme. And this is a theme that goes throughout this film, which should have nothing to do with illness and disease, right? But because it's the World's Fair and because it's the injecting needle of Seattle, it does become a theme.
Are you going over to see Aunt Clara again?
Oh, just say goodbye. Poor old gal.
Still sick, huh?
Terrible. If it wasn't so contagious, I'd ask you to come over.
You're gonna have a seizure carrying on like this.
I am?
Sure.
I mean, you sharks let a guy.
So, seizures, contagious diseases, and all this. Now, when he mentioned Aunt Clara, we had heard this before, haven't we? Clara, we had decoded, means clear. And that name Clara appears in many, many time travel films that we've covered, hasn't it? Has to do with the looking glass, or glass, clear glass. Claire Fraser from Outlander. There's Claires all through some of the stuff we've covered, as well as Back to the Future. I think there's a Claire as well. Now, this next part, they actually get into the numbers 57. And this happens several times in the film. 57 is the 5G. 5G is 57, alphanumerically. You're also going to hear the number 45, which is the 45th President, Trump. Let's watch.
Guy with only $5 on him, get into you for $700.
$5?
Yeah.
He dropped 400 in cash before he went on the tab.
5 and 4, 5 and 7, 45, 54, 57. Now, if you think all that's hogwash, understand that 57 years after this film released, COVID-19 would sweep across the planet in the year 2020. 57 years after 1963 was 2020. This film is another timestamp of things that had not happened yet. The world of tomorrow. Now, as I said, the number 57 will appear another time in this film. We'll get to that in a little bit. Now, I do know from reading your comments that I guess looking back at some of your comments as far back as 2 years ago, you guys were mentioning this film, and I probably should have looked at it. But we're looking at it. We're looking at it right now. Okay, let's keep watching here. So, Elvis' sidekick has a gambling addiction. This is a sidekick here, this guy, and he keeps losing all their money. And Elvis suggests starting a seeding business before their plane is confiscated by the sheriff. What do you think the seeding business is all about? Let's watch.
You boys are going to have a rough time up there dropping those seeds without an airplane.
Translation?
I'm attaching your plane.
Besides, all I'm trying to do is get us a stake so we can expand, be executives, start our own
Oh,
airline.
knock it off, Danny. We've been chasing that rainbow for 3 years.
How do you like those creeps? You'd think we were a couple of hobos.
Yeah, instead of 2 airline executives.
Now, of course, Trump also started his own airline. And you can decide whether or not you want to believe the connection to the film. But I think Jurassic Liars was on to something huge in comparing
Don't
Elvis.
underestimate yourself, buddy.
Now, there you go again.
Comparing Elvis to Trump as some kind of twin or a clone. So good work on that. As you can see, it's starting to reinforce a lot of what he probably was talking about. Now, next you're going to hear another reference to needling. Now, they're on their way to the World's Fair, so it's not outside the, realm of possibility that, this is the case, because they are going to the Space Needle. But I thought I would put this clip in there just so you could see that this is all about the needles. Watch.
Don't underestimate yourself, buddy.
Now, there you go again, needling. You're always needling.
Now, the two get picked up by a man named Ling. And he takes them to the World's Fair in his truck. As you can see right on the side, it says Ling, right? And this is where, of course, the Space Needle is. And I looked up the word Ling, and it means spirit or soul. Or it can also mean the chime of a bell. Watch.
Fantastic. That's
Good morning.
Where are you going?
Where are you going?
Seattle.
Now you'll see how all this fits in as we move through this decode, this bell chime, because it's all about the tone or the sound.
Uncle Walter's taking me to see the World's Fair.
Seattle. Fantastic. That's just where we're headed. Great, huh?
Good for you, honey.
The World's Fair. We're saved. Come on, Mike.
Now, at this point, things get really creepy because the girl asks Elvis to tune her ukulele. And as he is tuning it, remember, this is all about Ling, the bell chime. As he's tuning it, she repeats the numbers 5, 7 again. Now, there was a theory that we brought up, and I truly believe that the 5G technology was the first of the series to affect the human mind. There's a particular tone inside of it that can affect certain people once they've been prepped and prepared through a procedure of being poked. They're controllable.
Mr. Mike, do you know how to fix a ukulele?
I'll give it a try. How old are you?
I'm really 7, except when I go on a bus, then I'm only 5.
So there you heard in her own words, the 7 and the 5 and the 7 again, just in reverse. And this is the Ling, or the bell chime. There's something about it. Now, I don't know what tone he's playing as he's tuning this, but listen.
All right. That'll be our secret.
Let's go to the fair.
So he starts playing the ukulele. Now, where else did we hear this tone? Well, we heard it in the movie. Gosh, what was that movie? With Shia LaBeouf, where he plays a cop and he goes into the crapper hole. And right before the little boy is going to play a tone on the trumpet. Remember that movie we decoded? Well, it all is true. And it's linking right into this 1963 film. Let's keep watching here.
We'll walk hand in hand through Tomorrowland.
Through Tomorrowland. You just heard Elvis say. And look at this. The home of tomorrow. This is from the 1939 World's Fair, in which the Trump family had a billboard. This is a real billboard. Live in Trump homes. And there you see the RX symbol, prescription, and the needle next to the needle, and the womb. Let's keep watching here, because as you're starting to also see, the Chinese connection is undeniable. The China virus. So now, as we begin to accumulate the information, the evidence, the data, we have needles, we have World's Fairs, we have illness, we have the public vaccination of Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show. We have China. We have 5G frequencies. And this is where, in our first analysis of the Trump-Elvis connection, he really is starting to look like Elvis, isn't he? Keep watching. So they make it to the World's Fair, and Elvis ends up taking the girl inside. The uncle gets left behind because he has to go find work. There you see in the sky the frequencies. I remember these bands of clouds that look like this from back then. Don't see those so much anymore, do you? But this is what the sky used to look like. Look at the frequency in the clouds. Now, let me check in with you guys, make sure we're okay. They're probably, it looks like we're okay with copyright so far. Let's keep going with this. Now, they make it into the World's Fair, and next thing you know, basically they stop for the a 7 variety dinner. Now remember, this was 7 years after he got poked with a needle on TV. 99. So this is like the 99 Chinese red balloon dinner, right? And remember, Seattle were the first cases of COVID in America. That's where the first case came from. Almost suggesting it flew across the jet stream like the Chinese red balloons. Watch.
7-course Chinese dinner, 99 cents. Come on, Mr. Mike.
7-course Chinese dinner. Come on, Mr. Mike. Now remember, Trump is really the 66, isn't he? So 99 is 66. They're just flipped upside down. Now watch here, because not only is it a 7-course dinner, 7 years after Elvis was publicly vaccinated, but you're also going to see 49-cent menu items, which is 7 times 7. Watch. And there you see it on the menu. 7 times 7 is 49.
7-course Chinese dinner, 99 cents. Come on, Mr. Mike.
Now, as they move through the World's Fair, Elvis, of course, can't keep his eyes off the beautiful women that he walks next to. And Sue Lin, the little girl, keeps tugging on his arm to keep him focused. Then, after she eats too much junk food, Elvis takes her to a clinic. But while she's in with the nurse, Elvis has his eyes on another nurse that he wants to hit on. And in this scene, he literally pulls a needle out of this dog that he won for Sue Lin. He literally pulls a needle out of the dog. Then he sticks it back in the dog. Watch.
Well, I hope Sue Lynn's all right. I shouldn't let her eat all that junk anyway.
Well, what seems to be the trouble?
You can't make this up. Now, take that into the context of the video that we did 6 years ago, the eye of the needle, comparing that to Trump and the whole camel and all these camels that he was working on, this microscopic camels that he said he was working on so he could get to heaven. Wow.
It's my eye, ma'am.
Then he says it's his eye. So you get the eye of the needle right there. Poking the needle in the dog, it's my eye, ma'am, as he fakes an injury to try to get close to the nurse. Are you starting to see the Matrix now? Are you starting to see beyond the veil of what all this is really about? Now, next, he develops a hard crush on the nurse, and he compares her to Florence Nightingale. Now, why is this important? Well, you're going to see in a second here. Watch.
It's my eye, ma'am. Florence Nightingale, servant of humanity and all that jazz. She's the kind who might go for the sympathy bit. Who? Oh, the nurse I met at the fairgrounds today.
Now, here is the Economist cover, in which they designated 2020 as the year of the nurse, but they didn't do this in 2020. It was in 2019 before a single case of COVID had ever happened, that they designated 2020 as the year of the nurse. It was actually the World Health Organization that designated it, and the Economist cover commemorated that by putting Florence Nightingale's name on the cover. It's the very last line in front of Russia, as you can see here. Nightingale and Russia. And why did they do this? Well, 2020 would mark the 200th year anniversary of Florence Nightingale. Now understand, the Florence Nightingale meme was all about a nurse falling in love with her patients. Look at this. In 2019, the World Health Organization declared 2020 the year of the nurse and midwife. Before COVID ever happened, they were already setting the world up for it to happen. What was the name of the cover? Judgment Time. It's judgment time, according to the Economist, the world in 2020. This was dated November 21st, 2019. And it has been judgment, hasn't it? Now let's keep watching, because then we get a young Kurt Russell. His first role. Yes, Kurt Russell from Escape from New York. Watch.
They're all nuts.
Now, why is Kurt Russell in the film? Well, it's a cameo appearance. And he basically, Elvis asks Kurt Russell to kick him in the shin so he can see the nurse again. Now, shin is a Chinese word. I'll let you fill in the blanks. But it basically means two fangs. It's also a Hebrew word that means two teeth or two fangs. So Kurt Russell kicks Elvis in the shin. Elvis then gets a ride home from the nurse, and this is where we get our first Nephilim sighting. Look how tall this guy is compared to this girl. These people are of average height right here. Look at this guy and this guy. He's a giant. I'm going to check in with you guys. We'll keep going with this. Unbelievable. Now, this will be one of the most important videos that we've ever done. I'm glad those of you that did show up tuned in today. Please share this video, because this needs to get out far and wide.
No, I guess you could call me one of the last pioneers. Just going where the wind blows and flying wherever I'm needed.
So, there you heard Elvis talk about what appears to be another clue. A virus that would sweep across the world, blow with the wind. Operation Cherry Blossom. The 99 red balloons blowing across the jet stream over America. As he describes himself in basically his biplane that he has, called Bessie, blowing with the wind, going where needed, riding the jet stream.
I've applied for a job in the government space medicine program.
Elvis then finds out that the nurse that he's crushing on applied for a space medicine program. Now, what the heck is a space medicine program? The Artemis Project? The father of the vaccine? Space medicine?
Oh, that's great. You know, it must give a girl like you a wonderful feeling to know she can do something useful.
Then he takes her up the needle. Literally, he becomes the contents of the needle as they ride the elevator up the needle, like riding up the plunger of a needle. And as they go up through the needle, they look out, and what do they see? Inverted umbrellas. Now, we had discovered that these umbrellas are essentially also hypodermic needles. They have a part called a ferrule, which is the same part that's in a hypodermic needle. And so now you're seeing the as above, so below, because these umbrellas are pointed downward, and the other umbrella, which is the hypodermic needle, is pointed upwards, which is the space needle, right? So they go to the top of the needle, and when they come down, there's Kurt Russell again, and he exposes Elvis for paying him to fake an injury.
What an imagination he's got.
Oh, come on, mister. I could use another quarter.
See you around. Come on, let's go, honey. It's getting late.
Would you like me to kick you in the shin again, mister?
So 2 shin kicks, 2 shots. Wow. So then Elvis runs into Sue Lin again, the little girl whose uncle went missing, and he brings her home. She has nowhere to go. All of Elvis's friends are gambling in the apartment, and they ask Elvis what he's carrying. And what does Elvis say? He's carrying twins. Now, this can be interpreted 2 ways. This could be interpreted as a disparaging slur against Chinese people because he's got a dog in one hand and Sue Lin in the other. Or Elvis could be a twin with the dog.
What you got there?
Twins. Excuse me.
Oh, wait.
So then he puts her to bed, and then you hear Snake Eyes as they're playing craps.
What do you say? 7 or 11?
Snake Eyes, you move.
Now, years later, the film Snake Eyes would be filmed in Trump's Taj Mahal. We did a decode on that, and we had decided that the snake eyes of that film, filmed at the Taj Mahal, was all about the 2 piercings of the fangs of the snake.
Wonderful.
And you will be in cotton candy land.
And then Elvis sings the demonic Sandman song about pink cotton candy acrinodrome to the little girl as she's laying in bed. This is unbelievable. Watch.
Sandman's coming, yes, he's coming to sprinkle you with sand, where every star is a candy bar and a cloud of pink ice cream.
Now, of course, I have that scrambled because of copyright, but you can't make this up. Now, people were a lot more asleep back then. They don't do films with this amount of disclosure anymore. But this one, they let out all the stops, and Elvis was at the center of it. Now, we get another clue here. As I said, sickness is a central theme of this movie. We get another clue about a coming sickness. This is the 3rd reference in the film to sickness, as Sue Lin fakes her illness. Why? So she can try to get Elvis back together with the nurse. Watch.
My head's all hot in front. Will you come and fix me?
Well, I can't right now.
Oh, goody, she's coming.
Say, are you starting to feel better?
No.
The nurse then comes over, and in the backdrop behind the nurse, we see copper-bottomed pots.
Do you have a cigarette?
Sure. Well, that's it.
They go out to have a cigarette under or next to an umbrella.
A world of our own. You say you want me.
She's wearing yellow. That represents sickness. So this is, let's recap. Let's summarize here. What's happening? A lot of symbolism, right? Under the orange umbrella, that's Trump. His color. With the yellow nurse who really makes you sick instead of makes you better. Let's summarize. Sue Lin, the little girl, obviously represents China. Now, in reality, she's Filipino, but her father, the guy you saw driving the truck, he is Chinese. He's a Chinese American actor, and Ling is Chinese. So she's playing a Chinese character. So, Sue Lin represents China, who brings the king, which is Trump, back together with the Space Force medicine nurse, which is the Artemis program, and the father of the vaccine, Trump. The Chinese connection. So, Elvis' friend shows up as he's serenading the nurse, and he calls Elvis a wolf who is smelling orange blossoms.
Storm broke our plane in Hawk, and you start smelling orange blossoms. Buddy, this is not the time. Now he's a Cub Scout. What happened? Somebody steal your wolf whistle?
What happened? Somebody steal your wolf whistle?
Elvis then explains to his friend that he wants to join the space program and give up flying with him. This is the Space Force, essentially.
We get our little old airplane Bessie back. She's all yours.
You gonna give up flying?
Well, not exactly. I've been thinking about signing up for something in the space program.
Then it goes off the rails again, because Elvis then sings a creepy clown song with clowns all over the apartment. Look at this. Clowns. Another clown. Ronald McDonald.
Mike?
Hi, honey. I'm sorry. Still no luck. No luck.
Gee, sometimes I wonder if Uncle...
I see you're making some new ones.
New ones?
Sure. Like the clown with the green face that looks like you.
That's right, I do have friends. I don't have a green face.
Well, you don't now. You gave it to him.
Oh, Mike, you're just teasing me.
I'm not teasing. He has got your face.
Listen to the creepy clown song. Now, this is just crazy. Because when this movie came out, Trump was only 16 years old. He was 8 and 8 years old. And this is why I always tell you guys that this is a demonic spirit. This is some kind of demon that's inside these people. It's looking to possess the next presidents.
How would you like to be a little circus clown?
How would... He's basically saying China is making new friends with some clowns. That's China and Trump.
And you could wear a smile instead of that frown.
Basically what he's saying is, how would you like to be possessed? That's what the song is here.
Come on and buzz a little, sing a little, like I never heard.
Now, the World's Fair of 1962 ran from April 21st to October 21st. Well, 9/11 has 111 days left in the year, and April 21st is the 111th day of the year. In other words, April 21st and 9/11 are mirror opposite dates. April 1st, April 21st, the 111th day, and 9/11, 111 days left in the year. And that's when it all hit me. Watch this. Because here you see 9/11 backwards. What are you talking about, Casey? The biplane is 2 wings, 1 and 1, and then there's the 9 on the hangar number. Now, if you think this is crazy and we're all making this up, understand it was the biplanes that ran into King Kong in the King Kong film at the top of the, what was that? Empire State Building. And in later King Kong films, the planes came after Kong as he climbed the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center. Now, I hope you're sitting down for this, because there's another definitive link between this film, not speculation, a definitive link between this film and the architect who made the Twin Towers. Watch.
Hold it! Stop!
As Elvis is running through the park, remember, this was 1962. As he's running through the park, the World's Fair, you see this facade of the Twin Towers. The 19 tridents on the facade of the Twin Towers. There they are right there. The 19 trident facades. This complex would not open for 10 years after this film released. This didn't open until 1973. I don't think they'd even broken ground yet. They didn't break ground until 1969 or 68. And yet, here you see the same trident. So I kept digging into this. Wait until you hear this. The same architect, Minoru Yamagatsu, I think his name is, who designed this facade, also designed the World's Fair in Seattle. Watch. Essentially what you're looking at is the courtyard of the Twin Towers before there was a courtyard in the Twin Towers. As Elvis is pretty much taking the child through here.
Come on, move!
Now, Sulin, and I'll show you the Minoru architect connection at the end of the show today. I've got the Wikipedia page pulled up on the World's Fair, and you'll see his name right there in black and white. But let's keep going with this, because Sulin, she went missing after Child Protective Services took her away from Elvis. But then Elvis finds the girl at the fair. As you just saw, he's running through the courtyard, and he returns to his biplane, his 9/11 hangar biplane. And he's hired, essentially, with his partner to smuggle contraband into Canada. But he discovers that the job was a smuggling operation, and he refuses to fly. But the mob boss, whose finger you see here, he tries to force them to go anyway. He pulls a gun out and says, "You're going to do this job for me because I already got your biplane out of trouble with the cops. I paid for that. And so, therefore, you owe me. You have to fly my contraband into Canada." Well, at this point, Sue Lin, who's already been compared to the dog, remember? Here's where we get the rabies connection. She bites his finger. Watch.
Get out of the way.
They end up fighting. The fight ensues. And look on the boxes here. COR is what that looks like to me. Core Company. So then the cops show up, they arrest everybody, and they take them into the precinct. Watch.
Is he gonna be all right?
They say when the bump on his head goes on, he'll be good as new.
So they find Uncle Walter, Sue Lynn's father, or her uncle, I guess. And where was he? Well, he skidded into the sound frequencies.
Hey, what happened?
And where is he?
In a little emergency hospital 20 miles south of here. His truck went out of control on a curve and he skidded into the sound.
Elvis then signs up to be a NASA pilot so he can be close to whatever this space medicine program is and his new girlfriend. Now remember, NASA had not, quote-unquote, gone to the moon yet, have they, in 1963. They were still working on rockets. And here you see the rockets back here behind them.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. We'll notify you as soon as your application clears.
Thank you.
Now, it's all clear, isn't it? The movie, it happened at the World's Fair. What is it? It is the virus. And it started at the World's Fair Seattle, spreading across the world 57 years after this film released in 2020. And this is why they mentioned 57 several times in the film. This explains why Bill Gates was a tenant of Trump in his World Tower building, very close to the UN. Bill Gates was there, and the Russians were there too, in Trump World Tower. We have needles. We have China. We have 9/11. 19 plus 19 years after this film came out. 19 and 19 years after 1963 was 2001. 9/11. And then 19 years after that was COVID-19. We have the bite of the bat and everything else. This is some very high-level ritual sorcery. And now, I'm going to seal the deal for you guys. For those of you who are in doubt, who don't understand what's going on here, let's look at the Wikipedia article for the 1962 World's Fair. And immediately, the first thing that stands out is the logo from that World's Fair, which is the male symbol, or some people call this the Mars symbol. Now you can see this symbol throughout the movie. I don't know if any of my clips captured it, but it's throughout. You see this symbol as Elvis is walking around with the girl. And in this article from the 1962 Seattle World's Fair, you're not going to believe this. You're just not going to believe this. The word trumped appears. Let me read the sentence. Now, this is footnoted. This was from 2011 in the Wayback Machine. They're talking about the 1962 Seattle World's Fair. The quote is, as a result, the themes of space science in the future completely trumped the earlier conception of the Festival of the American West. They mention the space race. Trump vowed to return to the moon. This is why I believe he'll be reelected, because they will say they did return to the moon when he's reelected. They mention the Yukon, which is where Trump's family began their fortune at the White Horse Saloon or whatever it was in the Yukon. The wiki page also then mentions the Warren character. There's a Warren character in the film, and they must have been referencing this Warren Avenue School, public elementary school with several programs for physically handicapped students. It was torn down, its programs dispersed, and provided most of the site of the Coliseum. So they basically tore down the Warren Avenue School for special children to build this World's Fair. They also mention a key. Now, why is this important? Well, I don't show it in the film. Elvis has a key to the biplane, which is kind of weird, right? Why would that be part of the script? Well, they must have been referencing the Key Arena, which is what one of the pavilions was renamed. Key Arena, 1993, after the city sold naming rights to Key Corp, the company doing business as Key Bank. So, Elvis has a key to the biplane. He has the key, just like the Janus key that he held up several times. Once he gave a key to Netanyahu. Another time he held up a key, a giant golden key, during one of his campaign speeches. What else do they mention in this World's Fair Wikipedia article? They mention the Freemasons' Nile Temple. Let's read. The fair planners also sought 2 other properties near the southwest corner of the grounds. They failed completely to make any inroads with the Seattle Archdiocese of the Roman Catholic Church, who had recently built a Sacred Heart Church there. They did a bit better with the Freemasons' Nile Temple, which they were able to use for the duration of the fair, and which then returned to its previous use. It served as the site of the Century 21 Club. This membership organization, formed especially for the fair, charged $250 for membership and offered lounge, dining room, and other club facilities, as well as a gate pass for the duration of the fair. That was a lot of money back then. So you have to ask yourself, what was this membership for and who attended? And the final nail in the coffin. The fact that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the film was definitively connected to 9/11 and the World Trade Center is this. Minoru Yamasaki. I said Yamagata, sorry, before. It's actually Yamasaki. The architect who would build the World Trade Center 10 years after this film came out. The World Trade Center that was designed for destruction. It was also part of this World's Fair. He built the Science Pavilion that we just saw, that I said looked like the World Trade Center. Now, when I first captured the screen capture of the Science Pavilion and Elvis running through it with the little girl, I just said, wow, that looks a lot like the Twin Towers. I didn't know that Minoru Yamasaki designed it until this. And you can imagine I was jumping out of my chair. I could not believe what I was seeing. So now you're seeing the definitive link between the World Trade Center and the COVID-19 Space Needle and Bill Gates. Now, the article goes on to talk about flying cars. Air cars, they call them. Where have we heard this before? Air cars. Well, Trump just mentioned his new Freedom City proposal that there would be cars that could take off vertically. What else was going on at this World's Fair? Well, 15-minute cities. Are you ready for this? Let's read. Pan Am exhibited a giant globe that emphasized the notion that we had come to be able to think of distances between major world cities in hours and minutes, rather than in terms of chancy voyages over great distances. Now, this goes on because here's something else I found. A promotional video from this 1962 World's Fair. It shows DNA strand, one with the base amino acids that these two children are standing next to the 666 hexagon, hexagon, hexagon. Behind them, that's the mark. And next to them is the same DNA strand, except it's made with the denominations of playing cards. Watch. Now, what does this mean? Well, the word card backwards is Drake. D-R-A-C. Card Drake. Draco. Dracula. And standard playing cards are 88 millimeters wide. .666. The mark. Now, what else was in this promotional video from 1962 from the World's Fair in Seattle are some technologies of tomorrow that would become mainstay technology for decades and decades. Watch.
Is the Bell System's answer today for doctors, salesmen, delivery men, or anyone who must be available at all times in the fast-paced world of Century 21?
This was the first pager. Look at the size of this thing. And pagers would be a mainstay of technology in the 80s and 90s. Probably the 70s too.
Keeping in touch by means of the amazing new Bell Boy.
They called it a Bell Boy. Now, how did they know in 1962 that the Bell Boy would be used for the next 30 or 40 years? Next, you're going to hear solar power. Watch.
Home and get the message. Signal on the Bell Boy. You can go to a phone to call your office or home and get the message. Here you see the Bell solar battery in action, turning light into electricity to run this display.
Then you're going to hear touch tone dialing. This was another technology that would be around for 30, 40, 50 years after this movie came out. Touch tone dialing. How did they know? Is it a looking glass? Do these people see the future?
Thank you. Hi, this is the Bell System's new touch-tone dialing. I beat you. With this indicator, you see how many seconds you save the new way.
When you dial the 5 and the 3, the electronic central office's brain says, uh-oh, something special.
This is the beginnings of artificial intelligence. As you just heard her refer to this operating system as a brain and understanding something. A computer being able to understand. The brain of the telephone systems.
All you'll have to do is dial a special code, and then dial the telephone number where you can be reached, which tells the equipment's brain you want your calls transferred. When you do go out, it will be a simple matter to have your calls transferred. The electronic central office will solve that problem for you, too. One day, you may be able to call home and automatically turn off the oven. Or...
So this would be our smart appliances. Being able to call home and turn off the oven or turn on the air conditioning. This is the beginnings of Alexa.
Turn on your home air conditioner and have the house nice and cool when you return from your hot trip. From a public telephone a couple of 100 miles away, it may even be possible to call and water the lawn during that dry spell when you are many miles away on vacation.
On a needle up high, you can look through the eye.
And that is a fitting ending to this decode today. On a needle up high, you can look through the eye of the needle, which is what started this decode today. Trump's bridge in Dallas, the eye of the needle.
When you are many miles away on vacation.
On a needle up high, you can look through the eye and you're seeing it all.
And there you saw the inverted hypodermic needle umbrellas.
The eye and you're seeing it all. Yes, you're seeing it all. In the 21st century.
This was our future, and it's all happening now, isn't it? The eye of the needle, the arch, the portal, time traveler. So, that's what I had to present to you guys today. A lot of information, but it all fits together just like a puzzle. Just like a puzzle. And kudos to those who put the word out there. Channels like Jrassic Liars who had the vision early about the Space Needle and this particular film. And Trump and Elvis. I look back in my comment section, and a couple years ago, people had asked me to look at this film, and I didn't look at it. But he did. And he found stuff. I have not seen his decode on it. So some of the stuff that we covered today may have crossed over, but I can guarantee you there's a lot of brand new information because we did our decode off of the Holy Spirit. And so hopefully it's added to the story, added to the understanding of all this. And so people can wake up and stop being deceived by men. Because the sorcery goes back decades, past my lifetime even, as I've just demonstrated to you today. Let's go into the chat. Now, tomorrow, we'll be doing a Between the Headlines show. A lot of new updates on the headlines, so we'll slow down a little bit, get into some of the headlines, because those all fit into what's happening as well. We can't just do decodes, and we can't just do headlines. Both are important because we have to see where we're at in the timeline, don't we? So, yeah, everyone's like, let's go back to all the Elvis movies. Well, I'll leave Elvis up to the pros who have already dug into him, like Jrassic Liars. I'm sure that he's got many, many Elvis videos. I don't want to get too bogged down in the rabbit hole, but this was one movie we had to watch because it tied into the World's Fair, right? And we have covered the World's Fair. That's one of our fortes. We started covering the World's Fairs a couple years ago. And this is the body of Christ. This is why we each have a job to do. Each of us is a piece to the puzzle, right? So our work has overlapped, obviously. It took some time to overlap, but here it is now overlapped, and now we're seeing, now you can see from your perspective, the World's Fair connection, the needle connection, the Elvis connection. All of it is now making perfect sense. So, wow, unbelievable. So, this was a long show. I'm going to leave you guys to it. We'll be back together tomorrow with Between the Headlines. Have a great rest of your day, you guys. Take care and be safe.